It's Muppeturgy, and find us an empty lap, fellas, because we're here to discuss the Carol Channing episode of The Muppet Show.
Yay!
Thank you! Hi-ho! And look what we have here, us!
Indeed we do, Kermit. And all of you out there listening in the dark, welcome. We're so glad you're here. I'm David Levy. Here today with me are...
Adam Grossworth.
Christy Bauer.
And Michal Richardson.
I have the feeling that we have perhaps misunderstood the question.
On the Star Wars episode, I said that the London Muppet Workshop, later the Creature Shop, built Yoda. They did not. Lucasfilm built Yoda with an assist from Wendy Meidner, who worked for Jim Henson and who would go on to marry Brian Froud, who designed the Dark Crystal and Labyrinth. And the Henson team learned a lot from Yoda about how to make the Dark Crystal puppets work, but they did not build him. Thanks to Jason C. on the Tough Pigs Discord for pointing that out.
Here is a Muppet News Flash.
This week, we're talking about Season 4, Episode 20 of The Muppet Show. It was produced the week of February 11th, 1980, and it aired in New York on April 14th, 1980. It was number 22 in the air order between Doug Henning, Magic, and Diana Ross. In the news, in New York City, group taxi riding during rush hours was favored by a panel. And, this is weird and local, but what? So here's how the Times describes how this would work. The first passenger in the cab would name his destination and then pay the full fare on the meter when he left. Both he and the driver would be able to veto any subsequent passenger. If any were picked up, each would pay the difference between what the meter read when he boarded and what it read when he got out. So reading that aloud, I guess it makes sense if you're the first passenger and also the first to be let off, but that isn't necessarily how it would work. And I feel like there's no benefit to the first passenger to let someone share their cab if they're going to pay what they would have paid anyway.
Especially if you don't know where the cab is heading.
Yeah, I mean, I imagine there has to be some control for that. And you can do this now with rideshare apps, but like the rideshare app will also divide your bill for you. I find it very, very strange. And as far as I know, it never happened. Apparently, it did happen during a transit strike that happened earlier. Like it was a thing that they did to help sort of deal with that. So I guess it worked, but I don't believe it was ever implemented full time. Anyway, a health check on the nuclear accident at the 3 Mile Island power plant a year ago found no evidence that the radiation release caused any damage to unborn children that resulted in birth defects or death during infancy. I know that's good news, but it sounds so bleak and horrible. But we also talked about 3 Mile Island a lot last season, so.
Good to check in.
Yeah.
How are those kids doing?
No
Where
birth
are they
defects.
now?
Hooray! Jennifer and Michael were the most popular names given to children born in NYC last year.
Checks out.
Checks out.
There are so many ads this week for banks and the free gifts you will get if you open an account. And I just I guess it was tax day coming up, but I don't actually understand why that was a thing. Like, just why there were so many. Was it was April banking month? I don't know. It's weird.
Shout out to my iPod Shuffle.
Also just weird because, again, this is from the New York Times. They had a whole article about the new editor at the Yale student newspaper. I realized that past editors of the Yale student newspaper included people like William F. Buckley, but I don't know, that's just weird. They also describe her as Andy Perkins, a chunky, bespectacled junior from Baltimore.
Is she the first woman to hold that post? Is that why it might be newsworthy?
Maybe. I only skimmed, but I didn't catch that. But also, who cares? It's just
She's
so
a first
weird.
chunky, bespectacled
chunky?
person.
They also called her chunky. And then
Like
the picture,
peanut butter.
she's real cute. It's weird. Anyway, there's an ad for Time magazine with the cover story, "Is capitalism working?" Go with mostly no.
How are
Oh, no,
those kids doing? Check in on that.
Yeah. Is capitalism working on 3 Mile Island? Okay. In movies, Little Darlings with the tagline, "Don't let the title fool you," starring Tatum O'Neal and Christy McNichol. And I thought for a second I might go look for this. And then I read the description. Two 15-year-old girls from different sides of the tracks compete to see who will be the first to lose their virginity while at summer camp.
Then they hook up and everybody wins.
I wish that were the movie, but I'm sure it's not. Also, yeah, starring two famous child actors, just don't. Gilda Live, which we talked about on the Gilda Radner episode, is in theaters. In theater, Goodbye Fidel, starring Jane Alexander and Kathy Bates, whose name is not in the ad because she was not famous yet. The play is about upper-class Cubans who are caught by the Castro Revolution. Sounds like a hoot. At the Biltmore Theater, Nuts is playing. This will be turned into a movie by Barbra Streisand in 1987. A Day in Hollywood, A Night at the Ukraine is directed by Tommy Tune. There's a revival of West Side Story at the Minskoff starring Debbie Allen as Anita. For 3 weeks at Town Hall, a concert called Black Broadway starring Nell Carter and Gregory Hines, among others. And off-Broadway at the Astor Place Theater, A Couple of White Chicks Sitting Around Talking. That's Coupla, starring Eileen Brennan and Susan Sarandon.
I'm interested.
Right? This 2-character comedy takes place in the suburban kitchen of Maud Mix, who is having a tough day. Her husband is off on a weekend spree with his secretary, and she can't get rid of the pesky neighbor who has just moved up from Texas. Hannah Mae Bindler badgers Maud into friendship, and the two eventually join forces against their errant and erring husbands.
I'm very interested, especially if Eileen Brennan is the wacky neighbor.
Well, it's published by Concord. You can read it and picture those two ladies in it. On the Cashbox Pop charts, the number one song is Call Me by Blondie, and the number one album is The Wall by Pink Floyd.
Still The Wall.
And still the 80s.
On television, Gioconda Week begins on Channel 13. I was disappointed to learn this is not a sea creature or a snake, but in fact, an opera starring Luciano Pavarotti. This is actually really cool. They started the week with a documentary about it and then showed one act of the opera on each night, including background material. And that sounds like a cool way to do that.
Yeah.
My Gioconda don't want none.
I'm just trying to picture like who structures their lives so that they can stay home and watch an entire week of Gioconda Week every night back to back.
It was a different time.
I guess.
I mean, maybe people wait for it all year.
Live your life like every week is Gioconda Week.
A Gioconado could come by at any moment and take us all out. There's no way of knowing. On CBS, WKRP in Cincinnati is a rerun. The Stockard Channing Show, MASH is also a rerun. Flo and Lou Grant, a rerun. I find the strategy of every other show being a rerun opposite a major lap event that we'll get to in a minute really strange, but I am not a TV programmer in 1980.
And neither the Stockard Channing Show nor Flo were big hits.
Maybe they were burning them off, actually. Maybe that's why.
Yeah.
On NBC, a 2-part rerun of Little House on the Prairie and a rerun of a miniseries called Buffalo Soldiers. And on ABC, I'm sure nobody remembers this, but when we started the season, I mentioned that when I was researching the dates for this season, or, confirming the dates for the season, I stumbled upon my new favorite thing, and we're here. We're finally here. Olivia Newton-John Hollywood Nights, a variety show starring Olivia Newton-John with Tony Tennille, no Captain, Andy Gibb, Gene Kelly, Elton John, Dionne Warwick, Peaches, no Herb, Tina Turner, Karen Carpenter, and Dick Clark, among others. Parts of this were taped. Gene Kelly did not appear outside, but most of it is an outdoor concert somewhere in downtown LA. At first I thought it was the Music Center, but it's not. It's like a mall or a parking garage or something, but it's great. Like, it's an hour and it's sort of perfect. She sings Candle in the Wind with Elton John, and it's the best recording of that song I've ever heard. Like, it's great.
Was this to promote Xanadu?
They don't explicitly promote Xanadu, but yes, she performs suddenly with, I guess, Andy Gibb, unless it's one of the ELO guys. I'm pretty sure it was Andy Gibb, though. And she does stuff with Gene Kelly, but not their songs from Xanadu. But yeah, it's like right before Xanadu, so it definitely is tying in. It's also to promote the fact that following this special is the Oscars, which, again, the Oscars beginning at 9 p.m. Eastern time on a Monday.
Oh, no.
It's wild to think that they would need to have a special to entice people to watch the Oscars.
Well, I think it's more about filling the hour. And so
yeah,
like,
I guess they also like the Barbara Walters special for many.
Yeah,
many
it's
years
like Oscars
that.
Hollywood. Like, let's do a theme thing. Anyway, the whole thing is on YouTube. It's fantastic. I cannot recommend it highly enough.
I had not read far enough to see that this was before the Oscars. So when you were like, opposite a major event, I was like, is he talking about the Olivia Newton-John thing?
Yes.
Is that the major live event?
It was half of it. So then the Oscars, hosted by Johnny Carson. We've talked about all of these winners before. Kramer versus Kramer was the big winner. Dustin Hoffman won for Best Actor. Meryl Streep won for Best Supporting Actor. And Sally Field won Best Actress for Norma Ray. All That Jazz won for Production Design, Costume Design, Score, and Editing. Alien won for Visual Effects. I did not know that Alien was an Oscar winner. Love that for them. And the Muppet movie won fucking nothing, as we have discussed
Oh,
many times. But a clip I had never seen before, and it will be on the show page, and I highly recommend it, is Miss Piggy and Johnny Carson introducing Kermit singing Rainbow Connection, nominated for Best Original Song. And I clipped part of it for us.
Well, I can see you're at a loss for words, and that's understandable. After all, we have the most glamorous and glittering names, the finest actors.
It's because I'm a pig, isn't it? It's because I'm a pig.
What is?
They know. You know, don't you?
Now,
It's because I'm a pig.
No.
I did not get the nomination for Best Actress.
now, come on, let's...
Yes.
Now,
yes.
Miss
But
Piggy-
I don't care. I am too big a
Let's-
star to worry about it. Jonathan,
Yes.
you saw my performance in the Muppet movie?
Yes.
Well, can you stand there in your red tuxedo and honestly say that I am not Oscar material?
Oscar Mayer, maybe.
And there was a huge Miss Piggy for the Oscars campaign that year too, started by fans, but that really took on quite a bit of heat as it went on.
She joked later about taking out billboards on Sunset Boulevard. I mean, Frank Oz so good at his job, and also so's Johnny Carson. Like, they're so good together. If you never go to our show notes, just go and watch this. It's spectacular. I could have clipped the whole thing. And then Kermit sings Rainbow Connection, which seen it a million times, but also lovely.
But also we've seen, post Jim performers do it a million times, especially. So seeing
True.
Jim do it at the Oscars. Although I don't know if it's the same recording that we've heard a bunch of times from the movie.
I don't think he's singing live. I don't know. It's delightful, and it's very funny. It continues being funny from there. I could have clipped the whole thing, but it's like 5 minutes. So let's not do that, and let's move on to this.
Yes, welcome to the Muppet Show, where our special guest star is everybody's favorite musical comedy star, Miss Carol Channing. Yes.
Ooh.
Yeah, I want to make fun of that reaction, but to be fair, that's the same reaction I had. So who am I?
And they've been doing it the last few episodes for Star Wars and for Christopher Reeve. They've got the audience doing the wow thing.
Yeah, but for some reason it fits Star Wars and Christopher Reeve a little more naturally. Carol Channing, it's a surprising reaction for who I assume the Muppet Show studio audience is, but perhaps I should check my assumptions. Anyway, Carol Channing, actress, singer, personality. Carol Elaine Channing was born in 1921 in Seattle, Washington, but she grew up in San Francisco. Between seeing a lot of theater in her youth and serving as an elected officer of her class at school, which gave her ample opportunities to stand up in front of an audience and learn what got a reaction, she realized she wanted to be on stage. After graduating from high school, she went east to study drama at Bennington, and by her junior year, she was auditioning for plays in New York City. Her first role came in 1941 when she was 19 years old in Mark Blitzstein's No for an Answer. She quickly followed that up with a job understudying Eve Arden in Let's Face It, a vehicle for Muppet Show guest star Danny Kaye with songs by Cole Porter and a script by Herbert and Dorothy Fields. On the strength of these two jobs, Carol quit school, and then, save for a flop that ran less than 2 weeks, she didn't work in theater for another 5 years. She got married during this time when she was just 20 to writer Theodore Nadish. They were deeply in love, but neither made any money, and thanks in part to the stress of living in poverty, their marriage ended after 5 years. When Channing did work again, though, she had her breakthrough role in Lend an Ear, a review with sketches and songs by Charles Gaynor. She won a Theatre World Award and, perhaps more importantly, was immortalized for the first time by caricaturist Al Hirschfeld. Hirschfeld included Channing in a drawing called Supporting Players Whose Numbers Stop Their Musical Shows, picturing her as a flapper. And when Anita Loos, author of Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, saw the drawing, she said, "There's my Lorelei Lee," and theatrical history was made. Gentlemen Prefer Blondes opened in 1949, was a smash hit. The show-stopping song Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend, which you'll hear in today's Muppet Show episode, became one of Carol's signatures. And by the following January, she was on the cover of Time magazine, being heralded as Broadway's newest star. Channing wasn't only Broadway's newest star, she was also Broadway's newest bride, having married football player / private eye Alexander Carson, a.k.a. the Murderous Axe. They had one son together, Channing Carson. Carol stayed with Blondes for the entirety of its 740 performance run and spent the rest of the 1950s performing a variety of small film and TV roles while taking on a series of star turns on stage, including a mostly forgotten musical called The Vamp, for which she earned her first Tony nomination in 1955. In 1956, she split with the murderous axe and married her manager and publicist, Charles Lowe. Her son Channing took on his name and became Channing Lowe. If that name rings a bell, it's because he grew up to become one of the premier political cartoonists in America. In addition to marrying Carol, Charles Lowe also worked with George Burns and Gracie Allen. When Gracie stepped back from show business in the late 1950s, Carol took her place in George's live shows for a number of years. In 1961, Carol was back on Broadway in Showgirl, another musical revue by Charles Gaynor, which would net her a second Tony nomination. Although Showgirl is largely forgotten, there are a couple of notable things about it. Carol's husband was one of the producers of the show, a role he would repeat several times throughout the rest of Carol's career. He became well known for sitting in the center orchestra and leading the standing ovation at every performance. Showgirl was the first Broadway musical to be broadcast live on television, but it was only for an early experimental coin-operated pay TV that only existed in the city of Etobicoke, Canada. I looked it up. Etobicoke has since been absorbed into Toronto. The broadcast was a success, and although the film has never been officially released, you can find it on YouTube and presumably in our show notes. The pay TV experiment, however, was overall a failure and did not go much farther. Showgirl is also where Carol's monologue as silent movie star Cecilia Sisson comes from. She kept that monologue as part of her act for the rest of her life, and you'll see it on this episode of The Muppet Show. The 60s would bring Carol's biggest successes, most notably the starring role in Hello, Dolly, which was a once-in-a-generation hit show that broke Broadway records and earned Channing her Best Actress Tony. Dolly made Carol one of the few stars to have two signature roles, which is something she did not take lightly. She would return to playing both Dolly Levi and Lorelei Lee throughout the rest of her career. Dolly was such a monster hit that the title song was adapted into a campaign song for Lyndon Johnson, which Carol performed at the 1964 Democratic Convention. In 1967, she was featured in Thoroughly Modern Millie, starring Muppet Show guest star Julie Andrews, and was rewarded with an Academy Award nomination and a Golden Globe Award. Some other career highlights from this part of her life include performing in one of the first Super Bowl halftime shows. There's some debate as to whether she did this once or twice, whether she was the first or one of the first celebrity performers, but we know for sure that she and Ella Fitzgerald appeared together at Super Bowl VI. In the 70s, Carol got wind of plans for a Broadway revival of Gentlemen Prefer Blondes to star Muppet Show guest star Bernadette Peters. Carol wasn't ready to let someone else stake a claim on Lorelei Lee, so she sabotaged those plans by announcing her own intention to make a return to playing Lorelei. Of course, she was too old at this point in her life to pull off the character, so the show was reworked as a memory piece with the new framing device of Lorelei looking back on her life. Additional songs were written to rework the show for an older star and a 70s audience, and a quasi-new, quasi-sequel show was born called Lorelei. It played an extensive pre-Broadway tour and was already a hit by the time it came to New York. She was rewarded with her 4th Tony nomination for this performance. Still, Dolly was the role that suited Carol best, and she returned to the role on Broadway and on tour numerous times in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. While Dolly dominated the rest of her career, she continued to do other shows, including stepping into the Broadway production of Sugar Babies and headlining the Jerry Herman revue Jerry's Girls, alongside Muppet Show guest star Leslie Uggams. Besides The Muppet Show, her television appearances included a visit to Sesame Street, many trips on the Love Boat, guest appearances on The Nanny, Touched by an Angel, The Drew Carey Show, among many others, and, of course, her role as the White Queen in a star-studded 2-night television event based on Lewis Carroll's Alice stories, where she introduced the camp classic Jam Tomorrow.
Jam tomorrow, jam yesterday, but never ever jam today. I said jam tomorrow, jam yesterday, but never ever jam today. You can wish as you want, you can want as you wish, still you better hear me say. Jam tomorrow, jam yesterday, but never ever jam today. Not ashamed of marmalade.
It's like, oh, we're hearing the whole thing? I'm not complaining.
Yeah, I'm not mad about it.
If you want to hear the whole thing, it's on YouTube, or former Muppeturgy guest Robbie Rozelle covered it on his album, which you can find wherever albums stream.
Does he make the word jam 3 syllables when he does it?
He absolutely does.
Okay, great.
Perfect.
In the late 90s, Carol and Charles had a very surprising, very public, very messy split, with Carol, 77 years old at the time, announcing that she and Charles had only had sex twice in their entire marriage. Charles died at the age of 87 before the divorce could be finalized. In 2002, she wrote her memoir, which she called Just Lucky, I Guess, and if you find her as fascinating as I clearly do, I highly recommend seeking it out. Get the audiobook read by Channing herself if you can, which you'll have to track down on CD, probably on eBay. Although if anyone listening has the kind of connections where you could license that and reissue it on digital, there is money on the table. While Carol was recording that audiobook in 2003, she reconnected with her high school sweetheart, Harry Colligian, and they were married in May of that year. They were inseparable until his death at the end of 2011. Incidentally, when she published her memoir, she revealed to the world that she had spent her entire career passing as white, but her heritage included 2 Jewish grandparents on her mother's side and a black grandmother on her father's side. Her passing had been something of an open secret among the African American community, and once she shared the story in her book, she was embraced as a Black cultural icon. Carol lived to the age of 97, dying of natural causes in January 2019. Who has Carol Channing memories?
I mean, my earliest exposure to her, unless you count the impressions of her that happened on Whose Line Is It Anyway? Because Ryan Stiles had a Carol Channing impression. I had no idea who she was, but his impression was a lot of fun. But yeah, her housework in Free to Be You and Me, which we have a clip of.
We do, because I was also going to bring that up.
So, the very next time you happen to be just sitting there quietly watching TV and you see some nice lady who smiles as she scours or scrubs or rubs or washes or wipes or mops or dusts or cleans, remember, nobody smiles doing housework but those ladies you see on TV. Your mommy hates housework. Your daddy hates housework. I hate housework too. And when you grow up, so will you.
Written by Sheldon Harnick, who I feel certain we've talked about before.
I'm certain we have. But yeah, I knew that she was a character and a persona, but I didn't know much else about her until I was an adult. I have very much enjoyed, as we've been preparing for this episode, I watched that, I guess, whatever somebody watched in Canada by coin-operated TV. I watched that performance of Showgirl and her special with Pearl Bailey. And I tried to watch that Alice miniseries, but did not get very far. And I ended up just finding the clip of her singing Gem Tomorrow, because that Alice was rough going, as star-studded as it was. But she's a delight. I've been enjoying getting to know her better.
I feel like we talked about Free to Be You and Me before, but it was a huge, it was like that and Sesame Street like raised me. And so it was interesting because when I went looking it up, I could have sworn she did more on it, but that's it. But her voice is so distinctive and so memorable. And so like there were like pieces that are actually Marlo Thomas that I was like, well, surely Carol Channing did that. Marlo Thomas, also a great voice, not Carol Channing. She's not really for me, and Hello Dolly is not really for me, regardless of who is starring in it. But like, you know, she was monoculture. She's so singular. There are 2 stories that were like very popular in theater circles in, I want to say, the late 90s that I'm not going to tell either of them.
I know both of them.
You all do, but like I assume that they're not true. But they both like center on how distinctive that voice is, and like that's what makes them funny and also believable. Google Carol Channing corn and Google Carol Channing asshole. I'm sure you'll find them, though I have not tested this.
I read that she said that the corn thing wasn't true, but that she found it extremely funny.
Great. Love it. Anyway, also the fact that like she was playing Dolly for so long, and to the point where like, how old is the character supposed to be? Like, it also became like both a joke and you know what? Good for you. You've got a thing, work it.
This is where I want to shout out a thing that I discovered accidentally doing research on the 1964 World's Fair at the Paley Center, which is this amazing TV special that we've managed to locate online, so you don't have to actually go to the Paley Center in New York to watch it, where it's like Carol Channing is just like, you know, visiting parts of the World's Fair, but she like at one point is joined by a bunch of school children and says that she borrowed them. Doesn't explain what that means. She's just like, it's like, I borrowed a class from, you know, PS 31, and it's like, what?
Well, she gave them back.
She's in like full Dolly drag. Like,
yeah,
it's just the whole thing is wild. She has a number.
Yeah,
I mean, that was probably absolute peak of her celebrity. And
yeah.
Popularity.
Yeah.
And then she did the same thing in the movie Skidoo. She just borrowed about 50 hippies and let them into her house. I don't understand what that movie was, but thank you for encouraging me to watch it, David.
Absolutely. I don't remember a time before I knew Carol Channing But also, sort of like we call, my earliest memories are actually of people making fun of her more than of her herself. In the Forbidden Broadway series, there was always a Carol Channing number, so much so that by volume 3 of their cast albums, they invited her on as a special guest to do a number that they wrote for her called Imitation is the Sincerest Form of Flattery. But eventually, like, I got to know her through her albums, and I was lucky enough to see her live twice. Never in a show, like never in a musical, but I got to see her do her club act once when she was on a double bill with Chita Rivera, where they each basically did their own act and then came together for a couple of duets, which was, I think I was in high school at the time. It was like the best thing that I've ever seen in my life. And afterwards, they did a Q&A with the audience, and I got to ask a question, and like, amazing. And then, I don't know, 10 or 15 years after that, I saw her, I think at Berklee College of Music, do her act, which was not so different, except that she was like, when I saw her when I was in high school, she was an old lady. When I saw her 15 years later, she was ancient and she was wearing these ridiculous heels. And I spent the entire time like desperately worried that she was going to fall off the stage.
This is how I felt about Liza. You're going to have a heart attack, lady.
And yet, totally captivating.
Yeah.
Where like no voice left, couldn't really sing, didn't matter. Just like the way she could hold the audience, so incredible. And the thing about her too is she was a very, very smart lady, but she was also such a good actress that I think a lot of people think that the sort of dumb blonde character that she played was who she was. And it's really amazing to sort of rewatch some of those things, knowing how smart she was and kind of understanding the calculation that goes into it. There are a couple of recordings, like full recordings of her doing Hello Dolly on YouTube. One from the 80s. It's like not the best version of Hello Dolly that she ever did, but just if you're curious, just go watch about like, I don't know, 2/3 of the way through. There's a scene where she's just eating dumplings and it's all physical comedy and what she does with her face. And I dare you not to laugh. It's just so, so good. Anyway, I love Carol Channing. I was so delighted to see her do this episode, and we'll talk about that more in a minute.
So, after all of that, Carol, Christy, what did you think of the episode?
I really enjoyed it. I would call this bottom of the top. I know that I keep using these like gradations of rankings because I don't actually have a list, and someday I'm waiting until I've seen all of them to do my list, and it's probably a bad idea because I will have forgotten things. But yeah, I would say this is probably in my top 20, top 15. It's a good time. I mean, she is a Muppet, so kind of like Liza. It's one of those things where she shows up and you're like, oh, you belong here. So yeah, I had a good time.
Michal.
This is more of a bottom of the middle for me. I really wanted to love this episode. And I thought from the first minute that I was going to love the episode because I was fully in love with Carol Channing. But there's just a lot of missed potential and a lot of frustration in the storyline. And maybe this is that factor where I'm looking at the storyline because that's the part that I'm preparing the most for. But man, I do not like when Piggy is the butt of a joke. I don't like when the entire plot line is making fun of Miss Piggy and that she's actively suffering. And meanwhile, they have this great asset in Carol Channing. And she's, like Christy said, she's basically a Muppet and she's charismatic and charming. And yeah, she's practically more Muppety than the Muppets. And instead, there's just Miss Piggy hobbling around and complaining about her shoes for the whole episode. And I wanted more. I wanted Carol to have another song instead of doing her shticky character. And I wanted her to get more to do during the songs that she did with the Muppets. Yeah, wanted more Carol.
So here's the thing. I agree with Michal, and yet also enjoyed it more than Michal. Like every complaint that Michal has, I also have. But I really loved it. Like I wanted more. I wanted her to be more involved and more integrated. There's at least one number where I felt like it was the right idea, but the wrong execution. But I also was delighted. So there you go.
Yeah, I know I just said that Carol Channing is not for me, but like in this context, in this dosage, sort of exactly right. And yeah, I'm pretty much with David. I think I probably did a little bit less, but and again, agree with everything you said, Michal. But yeah, I generally enjoyed it. We've had such a run of great episodes that like it's a bit of a come down, but that's inevitable. And
Just wait for next week.
oh boy.
Can't
Yeah.
wait.
Anyway, I almost watched ahead since we changed our schedule, but I resisted.
Oh, Carol Channing. 30 seconds to curtain, Miss Channing.
Thank you, Scooter. Scooter, are you aware that it's freezing in here?
Oh, yeah, it's gotta be for the penguins.
Well, why do we have to have penguins?
Well, so the walrus won't get lonely.
Well, now I understand why my closet is full of dead fish.
Oh, I love that line so much. And it's my favorite moment in the entire episode. And now it's over.
Don't play it again. Don't play it again.
I mean, I want to hear that well over and over. I want to go to sleep to Carol saying well and wake up to Liza saying for you.
Well, now I understand why my closet is full of dead fish.
There you go.
I just love the specificity of dead fish. Like, it's not just that her closet is full of fish. Which, in the context of the Muppet Show, makes sense. But also that she didn't think to either ask about it or complain about it. She just accepted that, like, all right, my dressing room has dead fish. Sure, why not?
Yeah, she's complaining about the temperature in the room, but she's not mad about having a closet full of dead fish.
She is wearing a coat, and the dressing room is covered in ice. Just, frost everywhere. And yet, when we see her, she is holding up a thermometer. And it looks like a thermometer you used on a person. She's holding it up in the air, and did she need proof that it was cold? Everything about it is weird in a lovely way.
Yeah, but she looks magnificent in her coat.
So this seems like a good place to mention a really bonkers thing I saw on an episode of the Carol Burnett Show recently, which was during the monologue. So Carol Channing was one of the guests on this episode, and they got to talking about how she ate very healthily and like how she like had like bear meat and elk meat and goat meat like flown in like. And it wasn't a joke. Like it was completely like, like it was weird, but like I think she really did eat weird things. So maybe the idea of dead fish being nearby just doesn't faze her.
I thought you were going to say she ate walrus and penguin.
Yeah,
I think are quite fatty. So
yeah,
they have like 4 inches of blubber. Also, during the theme song this week, there is no Statler and Waldorf gag. There is a Zoot gag. This yellow feather boa sprouts out of his saxophone and just rises up to the ceiling.
I think this is a Snake Charming joke, though he's not playing that classic music, but that also just feels like one of those 70s, 80s things like Quicksand and the Mexican Hat Dance that was like everywhere and now is not.
Right. And like now that you're saying it, I'm like, right, that makes sense. Didn't occur to me until just now. Would have made more sense in the 70s. Gonzo blows his trumpet and all these leaves blow at him and they start to blow away in the wind, and then Gonzo blows away in the wind and his nose hooks onto the O before he's blown away. He's having a good time.
And he lets out a scream that I would like to petition to replace the Wilhelm scream because it is hilarious.
We get a new edit of Star Wars where there's Gonzo screaming instead of the Wilhelm scream. That'd be fun. Let's go backstage.
The Muppet Show backstage.
So this week on The Muppet Show, Miss Piggy is facing some wardrobe difficulties.
What's wrong?
I just bought these new shoes and they are killing me. Just let me get them off, will you?
Sure, Miss Piggy.
I can't. Here, just pull.
That's one.
Never again.
What's wrong? Didn't they have your size?
Scooter, dear, you wouldn't understand. You're not a woman.
The joke is that her shoes are too tight. So tight that she requires Scooter's help getting out of them. We don't see him taking off her shoes, so we don't know what her feet look like underneath the shoes, but we do see her feet stuffed into the shoes, and it does look unpleasant.
When she says, "My feet are killing me," she does this she sort of like looks up at the sky. She has like this very human gesture that, again, Frank Oz good at his job. Like like the puppetry it's so subtle, but it's so like, and it also feels like a trope from TV at this time and probably still. I don't know. There's just something about it that like really struck me as like perfect and surprising from Piggy.
Somewhere around this point in the episode, my husband turned to me and said, "So the theme of this episode is fetish?" And that will play out, as you'll see as we go along.
Piggy is not enamored with these shoes, but the problem is that Kermit loves them.
Are these your shoes? They look new.
Yes, they are, but I'm taking them back. They're just not the right... they're not the right style for moi.
I wouldn't say that. They look very elegant.
You think so?
Sure, I bet you'd look terrific in them.
Scooter!
Yeah?
Promise you won't ask any questions.
Okay, I promise.
Help me put the shoes back on.
Are you crazy?
You promised?
So the moment that Kermit says Piggy would look terrific in these shoes, she's become determined to make this work, which makes the whole episode even more painful.
So, acknowledging that I am a man and have little to no experience with this, like I understand the patriarchy and the impossible beauty standards that are placed on women. But why couldn't she just say, "Oh, I'm glad you like them. They're the wrong size. I'm going to exchange them."
Because it's embarrassing to have large feet.
Right.
And
She
so
is a
that would
pig.
draw attention to the idea that her, listen, she's a pig. Real pigs have hooves.
True. Like I just
Some
wish
Muppet
that
pigs have hooves. We just don't like to talk about it.
lots of shoes for men as well, but especially for women, are uncomfortable despite being the right size. So I guess I wish that they had made that the joke, and like just that like the heels are too high or the straps are cutting, or what, any number of things which I know really happen, but that they're still the right size, right? And I don't know, there's something about like the fact that they are literally too small that it just felt less than credible.
Yeah, speaking from experience, those types of shoes would be uncomfortable even if they were the right size.
Right.
I'm coming up on, I'm just realizing the 10th anniversary of the last time I wore shoes that looked like that.
Yeah.
I remember it is because it was on my 30th birthday and I was at a Tony Awards after party. And I was miserable the entire time. I was on my feet and like eventually was just like, I can't do this. But like they looked so good. And I was like, and then like afterwards I was like, I like came to the realization. I was like, you know what? We're not meant to be in pain on the best days of our lives. And ever since, I have worn comfortable shoes to every event I've ever gone to.
Well done.
Well done.
And Adam, if you're asking in women's experience, is the expectation or the aspiration or the source of embarrassment that you feel like you're supposed to have smaller everything, even up to and including feet? Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So, yes, you should get shoes in your size. And also, there is still this weird, like, oh, I'll get the shoes half a size smaller, and somehow that'll make things better and look better, even though that makes no sense whatsoever.
Right.
Yep.
So, the patriarchy. Anyway.
The pig triarchy?
Yeah. So, Piggy's in pain.
This is more the frog triarchy.
Right.
True.
Right. Piggy is in a great deal of pain. This is exacerbated by Kermit's sudden interest in her and these shoes and her wearing the shoes and how great he thinks she'll look in them.
So my other complaint about this plot, we didn't clip this because it goes on forever, but Kermit's tone when he's like, oh, you should walk around a little, show me the backs of them. Like, he sounds like he's teasing her and he knows exactly what's happening. We've seen him do this before, right? Where he's like giving her a hard time to maybe get her to stop being in pain and take the shoes off, or just to be a dick. Unclear. But there's no payoff to this scene at all. And I didn't like that either.
Yeah, I can't tell whether he's deliberately being a dick or not. I mean, and asking like, oh, those are great shoes for you, can you dance in them, is a reasonable thing for somebody in his job to ask.
And he never gives that like take to the audience or like glint in his eye that would indicate that he knows what he's doing.
I guess that's true. It's the tone of voice that we've definitely heard before.
Yeah,
It's very pointed, but it could be.
This is a more dopey Kermit in this episode.
True.
Like he says, "Oh, hey, let's dance around a little," and seems like he's actually having a good time, and then says, "Oh, the next number is my favorite number. I'm going to go watch Your Feet's Too Big." And he seems very genuine about the whole thing. So maybe he's just less dickish this week. Regardless of how dickish he is, Piggy has a problem to solve, so she visits Carol's dressing room and explains her shoe dilemma.
See these shoes?
Yes.
My frog, he loves them.
Yes.
My feet hate them.
Oh, you poor dear. I know what. I've had troubles like this myself, and I read somewhere that if you soak your feet in pickle juice, it shrinks them.
Pickle juice?
Yes.
Carol, I can't do that. I mean, people might say that I have...
Oh, don't say it. Of course. Pickled pig's feet. How could I be so gross?
Throughout this entire episode, people keep putting shoes on tables, and it makes me very upset.
It's bad luck.
It's such. Thank you, Christy. It is such.
Haven't you seen Blood Brothers, Miss
There's
Piggy?
a whole song about it in Blood Brothers, starring Patrick
Yeah.
guest star Petula Clark.
It's also gross.
But it's also like a very common superstition. I grew up with very few superstitions in my household. This was one of like 2.5.
Never heard of this.
And spilling salt, and like we had like a weird variation on opening an umbrella inside because like for practical reasons you have to dry it out. So we had like a whole thing. But like, this is like a thing, and it's come up in like other places recently where I'm like, this character would never do that. But I guess, Michal, you've never heard of it. I guess it's not.
The alternative is for you to see them kick off their shoes onto the floor and get more views of Muppet feet.
No, they're Muppets. Just like we can see the shoes coming off and then they can go out of frame onto the floor or onto a different piece of furniture that is not a table. You don't put shoes on a table ever.
Did not know this. And also, yes, they're Muppets. So we're seeing the view of them from the waist up that requires that the shoes need to go somewhere that we can see.
If Blood Brothers is to be trusted, then it's quite possible that Miss Piggy in the future is going to meet her twin and they're both going to die. So, very upsetting.
Well, okay, I'm glad I Googled this. There's a superstition that bad luck will come to a person who places shoes on a table. A belief common in the north of England is that the tradition relates to the coal mining industry. When a miner died in a colliery accident, his shoes were placed on the table as a sign of respect. So if you put your shoes on the table, it means you're dead. I thought it was just one of those weird things. It's like, it's dirty, therefore we're going to say it's bad luck so that children believe it.
Right. Sure.
Is this the right moment to talk about Carol's makeup? Because it's very visible in this particular scene.
Sure.
And as much as I know and love Carol Channing, I could not figure out for the life of me if she is made up differently for the Muppet Show than she would have generally been at this moment in her life, or I'm just noticing it more because of the intensity with which we watch these episodes. But so her trademark was that she always had at least 2 sets of false eyelashes on at the same time to give her eyes that like extra big look. But here she has extremely bright eye makeup, but then also extremely bright rouge, but not on the parts of your face where I think rouge usually goes. Instead, it's like across the bridge of her nose and even on the tip of her nose. It is very weird, and it doesn't quite make her look like a clown, but it does kind of make her look crazy. I don't know. People who wear makeup, do you have opinions about this?
I just thought it's Carol Channing's face and you're just supposed to accept it.
I hadn't noticed, but now I'm looking at it and she does look kind of sunburned because of the rouge on the nose. I assume you're right, that's makeup, but
I just pulled up a random picture of her on Google. It almost doesn't look like makeup. It looks like like just her nose, but I don't know.
No, I mean most of the like famous pictures of her.
I mean, she
tends to wear very bright red lipstick and yes, blue eyeshadow, but like the blush thing is super weird. I mean, like I have a whole page of Carol Channing photos in color on Google Images and
on your wall.
And well, also, and like none of them, except for one where she's explicitly dressed like a clown on Laugh-In. Does she have that?
Well, who among us?
Right.
Anyway, Carol's solution to Piggy's shoe problem is to call in Timmy Monster, and she asks him to put on these tiny shoes that are too small for Miss Piggy, but put them on his feet and run around the block a few times like a good boy. She divulges that she's also had Timmy Monster stretch out some false eyelashes for her this morning. So he seems good at this. Unfortunately, we learn later in the episode that he stretched out the shoes a bit too much because he tosses them onto Kermit's table and Piggy can't wear them. But as Kermit is ending the show, Piggy has her revenge or her victory or whatever the purpose of these shoes is supposed to be. I guess they fulfill their purpose.
Let us bring back our fantastic guest star, ladies and gentlemen, the terrific Miss Carol Channing.
But Kermit, I did want to thank Miss Piggy.
Oh, Carol, here I am.
Oh,
thank you.
Miss Piggy, dear, you wear diamonds so well, doesn't she? And you sang the song just beautifully.
Oh, thank you. But to tell you the truth, I have a confession. The diamonds are not mine.
They're not?
Yes, they're rented. We have to return them in the morning.
Oh, that's true. Kermit, couldn't she just keep one little diamond?
Oh, please, Kermit, please.
Kermit, it would make such a nice present for her.
Kermit acquiesces. Okay, Piggy can keep one little diamond, and she chooses the one on her ring finger. So Carol congratulates them on their engagement. So yeah, if we live in a world where the job of these shoes is to trick men into marrying you, Piggy wins. Good job.
I love that at the beginning of this clip, after Kermit screams yay, that Carol starts screaming it too.
Yeah.
It reminds me of when like small children interact with Kermit on Sesame Street and like they're not really sure what to do and they're so overstimulated they just sort of go with the flow. And, like,
yeah.
It's adorable.
Yeah.
I do love that this is the beginning of a canonical jewelry look for Piggy because she has that ring for a while.
Yeah, I was trying to remember whether she always wore a ring on that finger, but it does feel like it belongs there. And she does wear diamonds well. Carol Channing is right.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
As befits a musical comedy star, we've got a lot of music to talk about this week. First, let's get ocular.
Guys sure get up. How'd they get so lit up? Guys sure get up. How'd they get that size? When you turn those heaters on, oh, it's me. I gotta get my cheaters on. Jeepers, creepers, where'd you get those peepers? All those weepers, I'll be hypnotized.
So this Jeepers Creepers, which is part of a medley here. It's the main song of the medley. There are snippets of two other songs. But Jeepers Creepers was written by Harry Warren and Johnny Mercer in 1938. And it was written for a movie called Going Places. And if you're playing bingo, it was nominated for the Best Song Oscar, but it lost to Thanks for the Memory. In the movie Going Places, Louis Armstrong sings the song to a horse named Jeepers Creepers. I highly recommend looking it up because it is wild.
Excellent.
The setup here is very simple, and we're actually not done because it's a medley. It's just Carol and a bunch of anything Muppets. I have consistently called these whatnots, and I was at Museum of the Moving Image the other day, and they definitely call them anything Muppets.
Ah, I know the answer to that.
Yeah?
Anything Muppets are on Sesame Street, and whatnots are on The Muppet Show.
Ah, they are exactly the same, but great.
Yeah, same concept, but there are different like base models, and they have a different set of them for Sesame Street.
Got it. And when you could build your own Muppet, when you
yeah.
could build your own at FAO Schwartz, they were called whatnots, and they have one, and that's part of why I think that sticks. Anyway,
But the one you build at the Museum of the Moving Image isn't anything Muppet because you're building a
Correct.
Sesame Street Muppet.
Yes. Great. Mystery solved. Anyway, so yeah, it's Carol, and the set is just a blue cyc with a caricature of Carol hanging on it or in front of it, which is weird. And then a bunch of whatnots with big eyes. And as the number goes on, their eyes get bigger to the point where some of them merge into a single giant eye. It's not creepy.
And it blinks. The Cyclops eye blinks.
Well, so the Cyclops eye blinks, but Carol's doesn't, which is a thing I noticed when I watched the second time. For like the whole, at least the beginning of this, like she is staring directly at the camera and does not blink. And at one point, she turns away, like to turn towards a Muppet, and I assume that she blinked then. But like she is committed to this bit, and or is just always like that. But it is a sight to behold, no pun intended.
Blinks to her eyelashes get stuck together.
So let's hear the other two songs that are nested inside of Jeepers Creepers here.
I like you very much. I think you're grand. Why, when I feel your touch, my heart starts to beat the band. I fell in love with you the first time I looked into them there eyes.
You've got a certain little cute way of flirting with
them there eyes. You make me feel happy, never make me blue. No stalling, not falling, going in a big way for sweet little you.
So the first of those two songs is I Like You Very Much, which we talked about when we talked about Muppets Go Hollywood. It's the song that Rita Moreno did. It's a Carmen Miranda song from the 1941 movie That Night in Rio, which also has music by Harry Warren, but this time the lyrics are by Matt Gordon.
I laughed out loud when they moved into this song just because obviously the eye in that song is not the ocular eye. And it was like when I sort of realized what they were doing, I thought it was clever.
It's a good joke.
Yeah.
And then Them There Eyes was written by Maceo Pinkard, Doris Tauber, and William G. Tracy in 1930. And it was made famous by Billie Holiday in 1939, but one of the earliest recordings of it was by Louis Armstrong, which I'm starting to realize that there is a Louis Armstrong Carol Channing connection.
Oh, yeah.
There, with Louis having his hit version of Hello, Dolly. So that's fun. But also, for the bingo players, Them There Eyes was indeed recorded by Bing Crosby. Bing, bing, bing.
Bing, bing, bing.
Oh, what a great number. We should send roses back to Carol Channing.
What do we give the weird guys with the big eyes?
50 lashes. Very nice. Nicely ogled.
We were okay.
2020.
Ow.
I just really enjoyed Nicely Ogled, and I had to clip it.
Yeah, I like the way she says we were okay.
Shout out to Jerry Orbach's eyes, wherever they are.
No.
Oh, no.
We actually move from one body part to another.
As I said, the theme is fetish.
Say up in Harlem at a table for two. There were four of us, me, your big feet, and you.
You're such a tease.
From your ankle up, I'd say you were sweet. From that down, they're just too much feet. And your feet's too big. Don't want you, 'cause your feet's too big. Can't use you, 'cause your feet's too big. I really hate you 'cause your feet's too big.
Your feet's too big is the name of the song. It's not a proclamation about your personal feet, whoever you are. So this is a song that was made famous by Fats Waller, and I was surprised to learn that Fats Waller didn't write it. It was actually written by Fred Fisher. The music was by Fred Fisher, who was a Tin Pan Alley songwriter, whose other big hits included Peg in My Heart and Chicago, as in noted Joe Raposo stan Frank Sinatra. I have to call him by his full legal name. His signature, That Toddlin' Town, Chicago. And the lyrics were by Ada Benson, who I could find absolutely nothing about. I dug and dug and just there was nothing, and that made me very sad. But yeah, it's from 1936. And it was included in the Fats Waller review from Broadway, Ain't Misbehavin'. That's where I know it from. But it's also familiar to kids of a certain age as the theme song of the TV show Harry and the Hendersons, sung by Leon Redbone, who also sang the Mr. Belvedere theme. And, did those commercials for detergent. Was it all detergent?
Huh.
Yeah. There was just like a period in the late 80s, early 90s where it felt like Leon Redbone's voice was on television all the time.
Huh.
But let's talk about this. Let's talk about the big feet. We have two big monsters with big feet. And how was this done?
I have a lot of questions.
I would love behind the scenes photos. If you're not watching along with us, like if you look at one GIF, please look at this one. watch the Oscars clip and look at this GIF. It sort of reminded me of the what were they called? The Upside Down opera singers. Just
the chin.
Yeah, the chin thing.
Mupp opera.
Yeah.
Those guys, just in the way it's shot, not in any other way, right? So it's a very like busy background, and it's not clear to me if puppeteers are working through holes in it or if they've been green screened out. If they've been green screened out or if they're like wearing hoods or whatever, you can't see them like we could a couple episodes ago. And these creatures have live hands, like in gloves, like not like Swedish Chef, but like they are clearly human hands, and then fully exposed and made up human feet, and then someone's operating them out. So there's at least 3 people making this happen because they've got 2 hands. I guess one person could be the hands and the feet, right? This is the thing I'm not clear about, is like where all the parts of the puppeteers
There's
were.
some camera magic involved because like there are live human feet. I don't know. I've been trying to figure it out.
I disagree. There is, so they're performing in front of a curtain, and I think that there are puppeteers dressed in the same color as the curtain whose hands are reaching through slits in the curtain. And I think each puppet has 2 or possibly 3 people. I think there are hands inside the feet, and there's a hand inside the head, and then maybe there's also hands operating the arms, maybe they're like wired up or something.
I think they're feet. I don't think there's hands inside the feet. I think they're actual feet. They move like actual feet.
They do move like actual feet.
I was
it's also not feet. A curtain. It's a there's a print on it, like it's a drop, and it looks very green screened in. It doesn't move at all.
I'm looking at the GIFs now, but
yeah, me too.
I didn't find anything about how this was made, but they sure looked like they were human feet, just painted pink and orange, and just like wiggling the toes around while above
I don't
those
think
feet.
About it that way. I don't want that.
It makes it more confusing because it looks like either it's a full body puppet with exposed feet, but also it doesn't make sense because some parts of the puppet are operated by other people's hands. Like there's a lot going on. I don't know how they did it.
Right, because if it were a full body puppet, it would only have one working arm, which it doesn't. And they don't move a ton, so this is why I think they are behind. Like there are puppeteers behind them somewhere. I actually quite like them. I think they're very cute. I have no problems with the feet, but they're very weird looking, and I just mostly want to know how they did it.
Yeah.
These monsters were reused later, not on the Muppet Show, but on the Jim Henson Hour, on the Ghost of Fafner Hall, and on the Cosby Show.
Well, that's just strange.
The Cliff's Nightmare episode.
Yeah.
With the talking sandwiches and such. There are also some fun gags in this. He just keeps insulting her. The male puppet keeps insulting the female puppet and telling her just how big her feet are and saying things like, you need tow trucks to move those around. And it took me until the second watch to realize that was a joke. They're tow trucks.
And she's sort of delighted. Like, I wish Piggy had this attitude. She's like, yep, I got big feet. What are you going to do about it? Do you love me? Great.
She's just giggling back at him the whole time. Yeah. She is delighted to have such big feet.
Which I think is kind of built into the song. But, I do think Piggy could learn a thing or two about body image.
Piggy's doing her best in a very difficult industry.
I know.
So get ready, y'all. I think we have found my favorite UK spot of all time.
Oh, boy. Let's do this.
You're going to have to explain why, but let's hear the clip first.
So I just have to tell you, I had never seen this episode before. And when this bit started and Floyd was talking to Beauregard and penguins started coming around and he was like, oh, let's play something for the penguins, waves. Yeah. I legitimately thought the wildest version of this is if they started playing Jobim's Wave and then they started playing it and I lost my mind. So this is one of my favorite pieces of music. This is Antonio Carlos Jobim's Wave from 1967 from the album of the same name. It was also recorded that year by Sergio Mendes in Brazil 66. But the Jobim version is the gold standard. And I will someday have to write an essay about why I love Wave so much. It's like a perfect distillation of like a time and a place and a sound of bossa nova and jazz and beachy things. And anyway, it's great. Wave is more than a song, it's a lifestyle. But what's funny is Jobim later actually wrote English lyrics for it so that Sinatra could record it. And
sorry,
no to Joe Raposo, Stan Frank Sinatra. Sorry, I don't want the authority.
You're losing your edge, Christy.
I just figured because I'd already said it. But if you didn't get the bingo the first time, you're definitely getting it now. But we do have a clip, don't we?
We do.
You can't deny. Don't try to fight the rising sea. Don't fight the moon, the stars above. Don't fight me. The fundamental loneliness goes whenever two can dream a dream together.
God, I hate it so much.
The lyrics are real bad.
Lyrics are real bad. I don't like the performance.
Yeah.
I don't like that last note. I don't like the orchestration. Like, I hate it.
Yeah. I'm just not a bossa nova person. I know that we're going to disagree on that, Christy.
I mean, I wouldn't fully describe myself as a bossa nova person. I'm like bossa nova curious, but this particular the original Jobim instrumental recording of Wave is perfect, and I'm delighted by how it is deployed here.
What does it have to do with penguins?
Water, waves.
Sure.
They like water, right?
Yes. Penguins don't have flight, but they are consummate divers.
Yeah.
They have tiny streamlined bodies and tiny, short, tufted feathers that help them cut through the water as though they are flying. I learned a lot about penguins last month.
There's a very funny background thing. So during this, Miss Piggy comes out of her dressing room on the upper level and is having trouble walking because of the shoes. And she just keeps pushing penguins out of her way. And they go over the railing, but it's not like very often when a Muppet gets thrown or falls, it's a large event. They're thrown a great distance. These penguins just like sort of just gently go over the balcony rail and fall. And I found it so funny every time it happened.
I am so distracted by how distressed Piggy is. And like, instead of doing her usual, she is often looking at the camera and tossing her hair and feeling very confident. And she's just looking down and being angry at penguins. And when Muppet penguins get thrown, they usually get thrown up in the air. And these penguins, like you said, are just like...
Well, that's why it was funny.
Over the railing. It is funny.
It felt very realistic.
And also, like, it's just, this whole number feels very down to me. And maybe I'm just absorbing Piggy's feelings.
No, I'm with you.
I don't like this for her, but...
It just makes sense. And so that was Beauregard playing the harmonica. And the harmonica starts out too big, which is like a weird thing to say because they're Muppets, but like, Beauregard has normal human-sized hands and the harmonica is gigantic, and then it gets bigger. And I didn't understand that joke either. Like I was hoping, Christy, there'd be some key in the song when you explain the song that would...
No.
Yeah, it's just none of it really came together. But the penguins...
if there was a key change and he had to switch harmonicas, that would have made sense.
True.
But I don't think
that's not what harmonicas look like. I don't know. I was very distracted by the giant harmonica. I didn't even notice the falling penguins till the second time I watched it.
I assumed that the growing harmonica was just because that eye medley had already sort of like trained us to like be looking for things getting bigger. So I think it was like them being like, look, it can happen anywhere.
Sure.
Like if you're paying attention, wacky things are happening.
At least it didn't happen and your feet's too big. Although if your feet are too big because they keep getting bigger, that would have been funny.
Yeah, that would have also been good.
I didn't understand all of it, but I'm certain the English people enjoyed it.
I definitely did. All right, well, let's move on to something a bit more regal.
Time rolls on and youth is gone and you can't straighten up when you bend.
But stiff back or stiff knees, you stand straight and Tiffany.
Diamonds are a girl's best friend. I don't mean right. Diamonds! 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 Oh, girls!
Mm-hmm. Yep, this is Diamonds Are a Girl's Best Friend. Music by Julie Stein, lyrics by Leo Robin from Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, musical from 1949, and was introduced in that show by Carol Channing. And the 1953 movie version featured Marilyn Monroe. And every time I think about Carol Channing and Marilyn Monroe playing the same part, my brain breaks.
But they're both very successful at it. And like different from each other, but not as different as you might initially guess.
Yeah. Yeah, no, I mean they're both great at it. It's just that thing of like, you know, like I also see where in live theater the like exaggerated bigness of Carol Channing reads differently than it does on TV.
Right. And remember too, in 1949, she was younger and hotter.
Right.
Like she wasn't yet the caricature that we see in 1980 here.
Yeah. But yeah, the Marilyn Monroe version was number 12 on the AFI 100 Years, 100 Songs list and has a pretty big cultural footprint. There are a lot of homages. You know, the video for Madonna's Material Girl, the I'm Just Ken sequence at this year's Oscars was a shout out to it. And of course, the song is in Moulin Rouge.
And the next time that Miss Piggy performed it on Muppets Tonight with Whoopi Goldberg, they did the Marilyn Monroe staging. So for this one, rather than taking its cue from Gentlemen Prefer Blondes, either version, they set it, I think, in a very similar setting to what they did for Staying Alive. It's giving French court just before the Revolution with lots of pigs wearing big powdered wigs. Yeah. And like at a ball, there is someone at the door announcing the guests as they come in, and it's a familiar face.
Yeah, in this case, that announcer is Featherstone, whom you might remember if you've seen either Hey Cinderella or The Frog Prince. And he introduces Carol Channing as, it's hard to tell whether he's saying the Queen of West India or West India, which is what I assumed it was. But I think the wiki and the captions disagree. And he introduces Miss Piggy as the Princess of Trichinosia. And I looked this up to make sure I knew what trichinosis was. It is a foodborne illness that people can contract from eating meat, eating infected meat, I should say, and often pork. So they made a joke there.
There's something about this Muppet. In this scene, I have seen The Frog Prince and did not feel this way. I find him so creepy, and I can't explain it. Something about like the shape of his body. I did not find the feet monsters creepy, but like he's a full body puppet, but like his proportions are really strange. And I don't know, I found him very off-putting.
Yeah, he just kind of tapers off at the top in a way that heads should not do.
But then has like these weird calves that I don't think are the performer's actual calves. I think they're padded. I don't know. I found it very odd.
He's only on for a second and then they sing a song.
Yeah. Piggy, however, looks fantastic. And so does Rizzo. Rizzo has one of these French courtier outfits and has never looked better.
Yeah, that is true. And then also, I was like knowing what song this was, and like Christy said, knowing the cultural footprint that it has and having the associations with it that I have, I was expecting a big song and dance number. And instead it's just Piggy and Carol walking back and forth behind these screens and coming out wearing more and more diamonds and trying to outdo each other, which I was really hoping for choreography. And instead it's this weird, like quasi competition, but also they're not really mad at each other. They're just kind of doing a thing for the whole number. They're just walking. I wanted more than walking.
It is an odd choice. I agree.
There's like just a lot of busy, right? Like there's a lot
Yeah.
there are a lot of pigs taking up a lot of space, but they're not doing much. One of them is kind of giving big reactions and moving to the beat a little more than the rest of them, which in my head is the one that is probably being puppeteered by Jim. But otherwise, it felt like we should have had a production number, and instead we just had kind of like a stand and deliver.
Yeah. I get why Carol Channing wouldn't have wanted to reference the movie, but it would have been so much more fun to have them do something like Woman, because I'm a woman, with the two of them really performing the song and, in a more of an homage to that staging.
Or even, listen, she did her version of it on TV many, many times. She had like a very famous bit where she would have ropes and ropes of fake diamonds that she would then throw out to the audience, which she could have done with the Muppet audience. There were other options here.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
As someone who's heard this song many times in many recordings, I was really struck that they did it in Carol's typical key. And because Carol is essentially a baritone, that makes it exactly the wrong key for Piggy to be able to sing it comfortably, because Piggy obviously is singing a very high falsetto. And so they end up working around this in a couple ways, including making a joke out of the fact that it is too high for Piggy. And the point where the song goes the highest of the line, Stand Straight at Tiffany's, Carol kind of like points upward to challenge Piggy to go for it. And Piggy gives her this look and instead opts down and takes it down the octave, which is funny because it's also like, we've heard Piggy drop her voice low in speaking when she wants to kind of threaten someone, but I don't know that we've ever heard her do that in a song before. So it's a very effective moment of kind of catching you off guard. And then as the song goes on, we also hear Piggy singing harmony where the song doesn't really call for it or need it or want it. But again, because she can't actually reach the notes of the song, they had to sort of improvise and give her this kind of weird alto line to sing. And it works, but it's strange.
Yeah. As with the staging, it works, but it's strange and it's not what you'd expect.
The opt-down is a really good joke. Especially because this is in an episode where we're dealing with things not fitting Piggy. So for her to like finally in that last moment to be like, oh no, I'm going to do this where I'm comfortable. There's like a poetic justice in that.
It feels so out of character to me for her to not option up because she only goes up.
What's funny is that in the original version of the song, Carol starts it in her alto register and sings the verse down and doesn't get into her high squeaky voice until like the line before the chorus starts. And it's a little bit too bad that they don't do that in this, because it would have been a good moment for Piggy to be able to sing comfortably before it then like kind of wrenches into this other register.
Yeah. Unexpected, but it works.
Never mind that jazz. Listen, Turkey.
What? And get out of show business?
So a bit of show business this week. Carol Channing performs her silent film star character, Cecilia Sisson.
Now, I understand that your last film was the world's first all-singing, all-talking picture.
Yes. I had been on the silent screen for 7 years. Then I spoke and sang in Mississippi Melody.
And then what happened?
Overnight, I hit the skid, so to speak.
Kermit has a little hanky that he's using to wipe off his microphone every time she whistles onto it. That's fun. So this is a character that she has done before, the Cecilia Sisson silent film star.
I saw her do it live twice. Kept doing it for the rest of her life.
Yeah. I really wanted it to be a musical number instead of this, but it's impressive. She can do it.
It's weirdly impressive. I tried to do it. It's hard.
I feel like it would be a little funnier if I'd never seen Singing in the Rain. But like the whole joke of I was a glamorous film star in the silence, and then
yeah,
when sound came in, I was out of luck because they talk funny. Like Singing in the Rain does it so well. I don't need to see other versions of it.
Well, and also the whole joke is a speech impediment. Like it's It's not great.
That's true.
It's not great. I was just picturing Christy saying something about talking pictures the whole time.
Thank you. Goodbye.
So we have a mashup of Pigs in Space and Veterinarians Hospital, which when they start, the announcer announces Pigs in Space, and Piggy from offstage says, "Start without me, she's running late." And the narrator says, "Check," which is very cute. Just he continues doing his job, but he can hear them. And on stage, the crew of the swine truck is being held captive by a force field, which is impenetrable to everyone except for the times that people come onto the set, and except for Miss Piggy, who can come and go as she pleases. She hobbles onto the set because she's in pain from her shoes. She has no regard for the premise of this force field, and she puts her feet up onto the controls, which I knew was rude, but I didn't know that was bad luck.
No, that's fine. It's the
putting your
shoes,
feet up on
the
things is
shoes
okay?
by themselves on the table that is bad
Just
luck.
shoes sans
If your feet are in them, I think it's fine.
Oh, I
It's
thought
probably
this was
rude, but I don't think it's bad luck.
All right.
Anyway, why is she not wearing her costume shoes, like her Pigs in Space shoes? It makes no sense.
She's
I
stuck in
understand it's
these
not the
shoes.
show, and that is a stupid thing to say, but
This is her predicament today.
The frog triarchy.
Yeah. Kermit says those shoes are sexy. Those shoes are staying on.
Oh, sorry I'm late.
Go to the invisible shield.
Who cares about the invisible shield? All these shoes!
But invisible shield, that's part of the sketch.
I don't care. I'm in great pain. Oh.
This sounds like a job for Dr. Bob.
With the invisible shield.
Well then, what's the trouble?
Oh, Miss Piggy's in big pain.
Of course she's a big pain. What else is new?
I love the way Link says, "But the invisible shield."
He's so committed.
We've wondered
Someone
about
think
this
of the
before, and
shield.
I've decided, at least this week, like Link is just a really committed actor, and he's very upset. And also, like, he's still Link, he's still stupid. So, like, he's very upset that somebody would break the integrity of the scene, and like, just but how could you?
But he's not
it's real
mad.
to him.
He's not mad when Dr. Bob and Nurse Janice walk in. 'Cause
No, weird
they've
stuff
walked
like that
through
happens
the
all the time
shield.
on the swine track.
They've walked through the shield and they've walked in from another sketch, and he's not bothered. He's just bothered when Piggy is able to do it. But somehow Piggy being in pain summons the remaining cast of Veterinarians Hospital, and now they're trapped inside and they don't know what to do. Piggy just says, "Forget this," and leaves. And everybody else can't find a way out unless
How will we ever get out of all this?
Easy. Cue announcer.
Tune in again next time for another adventure of Pigs in Space.
You know, we have him at the hospital, too.
I gotta say, I love when Jim Henson's characters play opposite Jim Henson's characters.
Mhm.
I never imagined Dr. Bob opposite Link, and I love it so much.
yeah,
good.
I couldn't figure out which one Jim was playing.
I think Jim was Rolf. I think. Just because Rolf moves more.
Yeah. Also, like, Muppet performers go at their jobs every time a Muppet walked into the invisible shield, which they were very consistent about the placement of, actually.
Yeah.
And like smacked into it and fell over. It was funny to me every single time, and it happens a bunch because they keep getting up and trying again, and then Miss Piggy just walks right through it. It's very good, very, very good.
Yep. Muppets falling down, never not funny. Let's finish up with the Swedish Chef. We're going to have to talk about the grossest moment in the episode. The chef is cooking up the meaty loofah, and he shows us the meat, which appears to be actual raw, disgusting ground beef.
Sure does.
And then he shows us the loafer, which is a regular human-sized loafer. And then he proceeds to shove handfuls of this ground beef into the shoe. This is the meaty loofah. And then an indignant pig puppet shows up and asks for his shoe back. That this is not a shoe that would fit that pig because it's like the size of that pig. So we don't see this, but we hear it. The chef returns the shoe. We hear the pig slide his foot into this goopy shoe and glump off stage with it. And then we see him run back across the screen, pursued by all these dogs who are after the meat. It's horrifying, actually.
Well, I wasn't really horrified by the premise, although it is maybe not our best Swedish Chef premise. But I was very upset about how Frank is going to wash his hands. Because, like, if he takes the jacket off, he's going to get raw meat all over the jacket. But I don't imagine he could really wash his hands with the whole puppet still on him. I was very upset.
The shoe, the poor
I mean,
shoe.
the jacket can probably go in the wash, right? Like,
yeah, I suppose it's not
going to wash
permanently attached to the head. Yeah,
and the shoe, I'm sure, just got thrown out after.
Well, yeah,
probably.
Yeah, nobody's wearing that again.
But talking about, good at their jobs, when the pig steps into the shoe that's filled with meat, where obviously the pig does not have feet, like there's no stepping happening, but it was still so real and so viscerally disgusting.
Mm-hmm.
Is this the most disgusting chef bit yet?
Yes.
Yes, it is literally viscerally disgusting.
And look, I make a great meatloaf. Like I love a meatloaf. It is in fact my mother's recipe that she got from a magazine in the mid 70s. So it is period appropriate meatloaf. But like the sight of the Swedish Chef holding looks like 2 pounds of ground beef.
Yeah, and just stuffing it into a shoe. Somehow that just makes everything 10 times worse when it goes into a shoe.
Yeah.
And what if you baked it in the shoe and then cut the shoe away? So you had meatloaf in the shape of, a clean shoe, a new shoe.
I was just imagining the smell.
But like, if the shoe's made out of leather, that's got chemicals in it that you don't want getting into meatloaf.
They're both
the natural state of meat to be covered in leather.
Exactly.
Yeah, but like the tanning process.
I know, I'm joking, but
we're making it worse.
It's what we do.
With friends like these, who needs emeralds?
Thanks for listening to this episode of Muppeturgy. Join us in 2 weeks for a magical discussion of the Doug Henning episode.
Magic.
You can find us on social media at Muppeturgy or on the web at Muppeturgy.com. Buy our merch at Muppeturgy.com/store. Our theme music was composed and performed by Christy Bauer. Our show logo was created by Todd Brian Backus. And this episode was edited by me, David Levy. Annie Perkins was the first woman to lead the Yale Daily News, which in turn was also one of the first student organizations to elect women to leadership roles at Yale. So that's why it was newsworthy.
Okay.
Took the Whiffenpoofs decades to catch up.
I still think it's weird. Much like the Whiffenpoofs.